Hello, everyone. It has been such a long time since I've actually streamed on this channel. Super excited. We're going to be doing a book site live, and we're just going to get started in 1 minute or so. I hope you guys are having a great Friday. I am having a great Friday. I had a great networking event last night that I went to for accessibility professionals, and it was awesome. So, yeah, having a great week. It's just been pretty awesome. All right, let's go ahead and get this show on the road because boy, do we have a lot to talk about today. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Book Site podcast. Wow, it has been such a long time since I've actually produced one of these shows. And we are on episode 9 now. Super exciting. The last episode I produced, we had a flood in our apartment back in January. Well, it's been since January I produced one of these. So that was crazy. Of course, we got back through the flood and everything was okay, no casualties. So that's pretty good. But it is already May and it is crazy. The time has flown by this year. It's been pretty crazy. I've had a lot going on. And in this episode, we're going to kind of talk about that. Let's go ahead and talk about a topic that's been hot on the tax Twitter threads lately, and that is hiring overseas for accounting positions. I have my own thoughts about this, and I'm going to go ahead and explain those, but really, that has been a very popular trend, especially because we have a big accounting shortage right now. Over the past few years or so, we've had a major shortage of CPAs, EAs, and other accounting professionals. To combat this problem, there are more CPAs, EAs in other countries. To combat this problem, there are more CPAs, EAs, and other accounting professionals in other countries who love to do US accounting, right? Because they can make more money off of it. But with that being said, there's a lot of other risks that we need to think about before we try to hire these overseas accountants. So that's kind of the first thing I want to talk about today. Is it a good idea to hire offshore, or should you try to find some people in the US to fill the jobs? So let's do an example here. Let's say that I ran an accounting firm and I needed some new talent for my firm. Of course, I was looking for some CPAs, EAs, or other accounting professionals, and I couldn't find them in my local community. Okay, what do I do then? Well, the first thing I would do is I'd post out to the whole US or even my whole state, because maybe there's not enough in my local area, but maybe you should try your state. So for example, I live in Texas, so I go post on the Texas job boards and things like that. A lot of times these days, the CPAs can work from home. And of course, all the other tax professionals can work from home as well. And so that's a really good option to try to find some more talent across the state that you live in. If that doesn't work, then what you could do is go across and find some in the country. So you could post to the whole US. Of course, each state might have its own restrictions about working in different states and licensure. I'm not an expert in CPA licensure because I'm not a CPA. So that's something that you're going to have to check with somebody else about, maybe the state CPA society. But all I can tell you is that some CPAs can work from home in other states. So you want to check that first. The reason is because you're still in the US, you're still in the same time zone or very close to it. You still have control. You're still dealing with US data. Everything is still retained in the US. Then if all else fails, this is where people go offshore. And that is an okay idea, but that can also cause issues. So what do I recommend? Well, what I recommend is some US accountants are on sites like Upwork, Fiverr, Freelancer, People Per Hour, Guru, you name it. And so these are freelancer sites where it's kind of like a marketplace. You post your job and people show up. So you post an accounting job and you'll get a certain amount of applicants. Now, this is good because some CPAs may want to just work from home on their own schedule. So if you can't find an employee, you could possibly get a contractor, which will then help serve the same function. Now, I really don't like to hire people from other countries on Upwork. It just causes a lot of issues. I've had issues in the past. But if you just filter, for example, US only, that will make it a lot easier to try to get more US talent. And that could also help, looking for freelancer sites, posting in Facebook groups, even going to the colleges and universities and participating in job fairs. These are all ways we can retain talent and we can get new talent for our accounting firms. Okay, but what about other people that we normally don't think about, such as people with disabilities? Well, that's a really good question because people with disabilities do not statistically get into accounting and tax. That's not something that usually happens. I only know like one or two other blind accountants and their CPAs, and that's all I've been able to find. So the thing is that it's very, very rare. Of course, there are other disabilities too, like hearing and cognitive and all that kind of stuff, even physical disabilities like, wheelchair and things like that. The disabled population has a very high unemployment rate. And so if we try to tap into the disabled population, it can help to avoid these gaps of issues in terms of getting talent. Now, this can be easier said than done. Really, where you want to look for these is the disability groups. So if you're going for blindness, you'd look for NFB, National Federation of the Blind. If you're going for ACB, which is another blindness group, the demographics tend to be a little bit older, but you can still find some good financial professionals there. That is American Council of the Blind, or ACB. I'm not familiar with any of the other groups that are available for other disabilities because I don't have the other disabilities. I have only blindness and ADHD. So those are kind of some places you can look on that front. So what do I think about hiring overseas though, right? Because that was the original question that I proposed in the beginning of this podcast. The thing is that hiring overseas has its own risks. And I posted a tweet on Tax Twitter today. So go check out Tax Twitter if you haven't. And I was talking about how hiring overseas could be a problem. And I'll just kind of go through some basic scenarios here. So the first thing that can happen is, of course, because your data is being transferred through different borders and things, your data is probably not going to be in the US. So if you have like clients who are mandating that your data always is in the US, right? Well, that's not going to work because, if you have offshore people in who knows what other countries, unfortunately, your data is not going to be in the US. So then you can not be able to serve those clients, or you have to lie to them, which I don't really feel like is ethical. And then the other problem is security. So, for example, I had a situation, I'm not going to explain how this happened, but I had a situation where I had overseas contractors that I was working with, and they were able to get my EIN and try to start a business in their country. Start a business in the US with my EIN. I spent 4.5 hours on the phone with the IRS trying to sort this out. And then I had to get a new EIN. And then I had to get a new EIN so that I could, 3, 2, 1. And then I had to get a new EIN so that I was able to operate my business because it was basically compromised. That wasn't any fun. The other thing too is if you're going to hire overseas, here are a couple things you can do. Make sure you choose from reputable countries. There's a list on the US site, and it basically has a list of countries where you should or should not travel to. So it has like safety index, all that other stuff, political, many more criteria. I would first start there, right? Because it would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on and so forth. And that way you can kind of understand how these countries are. Because what if you need to travel there? You want to make sure you hire from safe countries, right? So that's one place I'd start. I'd also hire from like the developed countries, the first world, like UK, Canada, most of the EU. I'm not going to name them all because I don't frankly know them all. Hire from those countries because they're the countries that are, quote unquote, most similar to the US, right? They kind of have the same cultures, sort of, right? But they're not totally drastic that it puts you off guard. Now, what I would also do is enforce strict security protocols. So I would always make the overseas employees use a VPN, virtual private network. That way we can make sure that data is at least somewhat secure, right? Because we want to make sure that that data is at least sort of in the US, even if it's a non-US computer, right? At least it's sort of in the US. Another thing you could do is you could set them up with what's called Windows 365, where you can provision them a virtual PC in the cloud. The advantage to this is that you don't have to ship a computer to them if they're an employee all the way across the world. And you can have control because it will act like that they're computer is in the US. So that's an option. You have to be a Microsoft 365 subscriber to take advantage of that, though, but you do have that as availability. Now, another thing to keep in mind when you're hiring overseas employees is you want to make sure that they are at least trying to work your time zone. Now, why does this matter? Well, as your firm owner, you really don't want to be up like 24 hours a day trying to answer the overseas contractors' questions. You're trying to go to bed, vice versa. So try to keep compatible time zones if possible. That's always a very good tip as well. But generally, I discourage overseas contracting because it's risky, it's prone to error, and it could be a security vulnerability. Now, I have heard of people like Jason Stats do it. He's done it pretty successfully, and he does what are called trial days. That's good as well. But again, I just don't have that kind of patience. And of course, also with the whole EIN thing, it's kind of making me a little bit hesitant. So that's kind of something else too, is that the EIN, that whole deal is just really, really making me reconsider. Now, another thing that has been happening in my life is that I have started the Tax Mama EA course. As I've told y'all, last year, I have decided to buy the Tax Mama EA course. If you're not familiar with Tax Mama does tax education. She teaches people how to become an EA, enrolled agent. And my class so far has been very good. Now, I'm not going to lie and say it kicks my butt because truthfully it is. I'm thinking, holy moly, this class is a full-time job and some. But it's really rewarding. I mean, yes, I'm getting a lot of questions wrong. Yes, I'm struggling. But the thing is that I'm learning so much. And it's also really interesting because this is my first time ever preparing taxes other than using TurboTax for my taxes, right? So I've never actually learned about tax law before, unlike some of my classmates. So yeah, I'm into week 2? Pretty much, yeah, week 2, going into week 3. And I'm absolutely loving Tax Mama. Tax Mama is wonderful. She's accommodating. I'd highly recommend it. Just be ready to work your butt off. Now, a couple of the things is that the EA exam is accessible. So I've called Prometric. I'm waiting on a PTIN. I just sent a check-in because my payment method decided to get declined when I tried to apply for the PTIN a year or so ago. That was kind of fun. But yeah, that's something the IRS needs to improve. If for some reason your payment method fails, just let me use that payment form again and try to submit it again instead of having to mail a paper check. For one thing, as someone who's blind, that's a pain in the butt. But for two, it's just very time consuming. Come on, IRS. And yeah, so I have talked to Prometric. They do accommodations, and I should be able to get draws, which is a screen reader. I'm not tested yet, so I'm not taking any of the parts yet, and I'm not scheduled anything just because I'm still trying to wait on the PTIN. I'm also just making sure that I'm ready and trying to figure out accommodations, but it's slowly coming together. I will keep you posted in future episodes. Hopefully I pass. Okay, let's talk about tax season. So tax season has just wrapped up for me, and I didn't really have much of a tax season this year because I didn't really prepare any returns just because I was waiting to get my EA and all that kind of stuff. But I have had to do a lot of bookkeeping for tax season, and it's just been very, very crazy. So tax season this year was pretty crazy because of all the books I need to be kept. I've also had a surge in training requests. So another site that I've been working on that's pretty new, I've not really told you guys, is called Take Lessons. It's actually a tutoring site. You can learn anything on there. And it's ran by Microsoft. I've had a crazy amount of students. I mean, I just got 2 this morning. I've gotten 2 yesterday, 2 the day before. I'm like number 1 in the QuickBooks category. And if anyone wants QuickBooks training, I will put my Take Lessons link in the description. You guys can go ahead and book through my Take Lessons profile. But yes, it's been absolutely crazy and I'm loving it, but it's also come with its own set of challenges. And I'm going to do a whole podcast episode about how I teach being blind. That can be a whole 30-minute episode itself. but that will be coming probably next week or the week after. But it has been super, super awesome. And that people are really wanting me to teach them QuickBooks because, yeah, that's just really cool. So yeah, the tax season really has been pretty quiet though. Just very minimal stuff. I'm sure next year is going to be a lot busier and just a lot more going on. Our final topic today is life updates. So I'm going to not really get into a whole lot of this, but basically I am now self-employed. So I did have a job with an accessibility firm, and I just needed to step away and be my own boss. I'm not going to get into why, but it's just a lot of things happened, and it's time for me to move on. I'm also realizing that my passion is in tax. So while I love accessibility, I love tax. And that is something that I've been really, really thinking about, is who I want to be. I'm still trying to find my identity, and that's something that's pretty hard, right? I'm still trying to figure out who I want to be. And I really loved tax. I mean, this is just awesome. I've loved it so much, and I'm learning so much, and I just can't stop learning. And it's just really, really rewarding for me. So that's been really awesome, is that I've literally been able to find my own path. I've been defining my own future. And no one ever told me what to do in terms of tax, right? In the past, people would always say, oh, you need to get into tech. And then I just did it. And I'm like, okay, but I don't really like tech. I mean, I love like getting new tech, but I can't talk tech for hours on end like Michael can. You know, I get out teched by the techies. But I love tech in some aspects. You know, I love AI, as you guys know, because that ChatGPT video on my channel went really crazy. If you've not seen that yet, you guys need to see that. But I just don't feel like I can talk tech at their level. And also programming, I've just really had trouble with it. And I just don't feel like it's my thing. But tax, honestly, guys, I literally learned about tax by myself. No one ever told me, oh, Taylor, you need to go in the tax field. No one ever said that. And I made that decision on my own that I need to go in the tax field. And I learned exactly what I needed to do. And I've chosen my own path. And I think that is the biggest thing to take away from this, is I have chosen my own path in the tax industry. And as you all tell, you know, my tone is pretty enthusiastic. I'm very passionate about this. It makes me very happy. And I'm just super excited about everything that's going to be going on. So definitely looking forward to learning more about tax, getting my EA, talking about all that stuff. And it's just going to be a great, great future ahead. So I also want to talk about one more thing. I didn't actually put this in the title, but it just kind of came to me. I want to talk about tax software for a minute. So as you all know, tax software is very, very pivotal to our profession, right? You guys know this. Unfortunately, a lot of the tax software is not accessible. So I was messing around one day, and it was like my first or second day of self-employment. I didn't have anything to do because I was just figuring stuff out. And I decided to mess with TaxSlayer Pro. Now, TaxSlayer Pro is accessible-ish. Let me explain. The web version, 1040, that is very accessible, right? That is very, very accessible. It's almost more accessible than Intuit Pro Connect and Ultimate Tax, which I talked about in a previous episode. However, unfortunately, I can't prepare business returns in the web app. That's kind of a shame. If I could, I'd be buying TaxSlayer Pro in a heartbeat. So this is a word of warning, not really warning, but encouragement to you tax software manufacturers. Please, please, please make your software accessible. It really helps to get more people who are disabled in this tax field. Please, please, please. And if you ever want help with that, I can assist you. But please make it more accessible, because that's why there's not a lot of blind tax preparers in this country, is because the software is not accessible. Did you know that a lot of the blind people in this country go into one of three careers: music, tech, or blindness services? So blindness services is like accessibility testing, or well, I guess it's more tech, but you know, teaching or warehouse work or other things. And tech is tech, software development, you know, etc. One of those things I mentioned in that list was not finance, was it? No. I know a few people who are in finance, but they're not in finance in the tax industry. They're in personal finance, investments, stocks, mutual funds, yada, yada, yada. Yes, that stuff is kind of interesting, but no, I don't really want to be doing that for the rest of my life. What I want to be doing is helping with taxes, bookkeeping, and all that fun stuff. So, long story short, people, let's go ahead and change the world by making tax software accessible. And super exciting, we're going to go ahead and try to do this, but yes, this has been a very great episode, and I'm super excited to produce these. I'm going to be doing a little bit of a schedule shift. To accommodate some other self-employment stuff, but I'm going to be doing recording on Fridays, posting on the next Friday. So hopefully that works. I'm going to try to stick to 1 p.m. Central going live on the channel. So if you want to see me live on the channel, please go to Taylor Arndt, subscribe to my channel, and we can go ahead and do these every Friday live at 1 p.m. Central. All right, everyone, have a wonderful day, and we will talk next week, where we're going to do a podcast episode, hopefully on how I teach as a blind person. We'll see what happens, but yeah. So we'll stay tuned for that. And all right, everyone, talk to you later.